This is the story of Maya, a 38-year-old mother whose life was about to turn into a nightmare she would have to fight to escape. It all began on a seemingly ordinary evening at a church charity gala. The hall was filled with people. The air fragrant with incense and flickering candles cast a soft glow on tables decorated with white flowers. As she played her cello, the melancholic notes drifting through the air like unshed tears, she didn't notice she was being watched. Maya would close her eyes from time to time, letting the music carry her away, her hands gliding masterfully over the strings. The sound echoed off the walls, touching the hearts of those present in a way words never could. An important man, with a piercing gaze and a smile that promised the world, was following her every move. Julian leaned against a marble column, his arms crossed, watching her with an intensity that bordered on obsession. He wasn't just drawn to her beauty, though she was breathtaking, with her olive skin glowing in the candlelight and her long hair cascading down her back. No, it was something deeper, darker. He saw Maya as a conquest, a trophy he needed to possess. When the music ended and applause filled the hall, Julian approached with the confidence of a man who always gets what he wants. "You play as if the strings were extensions of your soul," he said, his voice as smooth as honey. Maya, still putting away her instrument, looked up and met the gaze of this impeccably dressed man, his dark suit perfectly tailored, an expensive watch gleaming on his wrist. She smiled shyly, feeling her cheeks flush. "Thank you," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. Julian extended his hand. "Julian, and you are?" "Maya," she answered, shaking his hand. His touch was firm, almost possessive, and it lingered a second longer than was appropriate. That night, Julian never left her side. He showered her with compliments, brought her glasses of wine, and told her stories of his travels around the world. Maya, who had lived a solitary life for years, dedicated only to her son and her work, found herself seduced by the attention. It was as if the world had finally noticed her existence. When the party ended, he walked her to her car, insisting it wasn't safe for her to go alone so late. "Can I call you?" he asked, his phone already in his hand. She hesitated for a second, but then nodded, typing in her number. In the days that followed, Julian became a constant presence. Flowers arrived at her house every morning: red roses, white lilies, exotic orchids. Sweet messages woke her up and lulled her to sleep. He took her to dinners at expensive restaurants where waiters bowed to him and called him sir. He pursued Maya with an overwhelming intensity, and the sudden attention made her happy, reigniting a hope that had long been dormant. But there was something about that intensity that unsettled her, a small voice in her head whispering caution. Despite everything, she felt she needed time, calm. But the man's charm, his romantic and conquering ways, combined with his almost hypnotic insistence, made her lower her guard. One night, walking along the beach under the moonlight, the sea breeze carrying the scent of salt and iodine, the waves lapping the sand in a hypnotic rhythm, Julian stopped and took Maya's hands. His eyes shone with a determination she couldn't decipher. "What do I have to do to win you over?" Julian asked, his voice a velvety whisper. The distant cry of seagulls mixed with the sound of the sea. Maya, trying to keep her composure, her heart racing, replied, "Slow down, what's the rush?" She laughed nervously, trying to ease the tension she felt. His response was a direct hit to her lonely heart. "It's because I want you as my wife," he said, short and direct, leaving no room for doubt. Those words echoed in her mind like a church bell, reverberating in every corner of her lonely soul. It was enough. Maya surrendered to Julian's charms and said yes. In the blink of an eye, he asked her to marry him. It was all too fast, a hurricane of emotions that swept her from her quiet life into a whirlwind of promises and dreams. Maya, a single mother with an almost innocent beauty, a sculpted body, and naive eyes, made Julian even more obsessed. He said she was pure, untouched, perfect. These words made her feel special, but they also created a pressure she didn't fully understand. Then came that night. Julian took her to a luxurious mountain hotel where chilled champagne awaited them and rose petals covered the king-size bed. The view from the balcony showed a valley illuminated by the city lights below, a sea of artificial stars twinkling in the darkness. "We're almost married," he whispered, kissing her neck, his hands exploring her body. "What's a few days' difference?" Maya knew she should wait, that she had promised herself she would walk down the aisle first. But desire, the loneliness of so many years, the promise of eternal love in his eyes, it all conspired against her resolve. In a moment of weakness, she spent her first night with him before the wedding, breaking the promise she had made to herself. Regret washed over her like a cold wave the next morning, but it was too late. Little did she know that a single night would seal her fate. 2 weeks later, she was waking up to morning sickness. A pharmacy test confirmed it. She was pregnant. When she told Julian, expecting him to be happy, excited, ready to rush the wedding, his reaction was strange. He smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "That's wonderful, my love," he said, but his voice sounded hollow, as if he were reading from a script. "We'll have to postpone the wedding a bit. I don't want you to be pregnant in your wedding dress. After the baby is born, we'll have a memorable party." Something in the pit of her stomach twisted, a premonition that something was terribly wrong. From that moment on, Julian's mask began to slip. Every time Maya brought up the wedding, he changed the subject, his gaze turning cold. "Now is not the time for that, Maya," he'd say, irritated. "You need to think about the baby, not parties." His visits became less frequent. He started coming home late, smelling of a perfume that wasn't hers, with vague excuses about business meetings. Maya's pregnancy was a lonely journey, marked by doctor's appointments she attended alone and ultrasound pictures she showed to an absent father who barely glanced at them. The boy was born on a rainy October morning, the sound of rain against the hospital windows accompanying her cries of pain, and finally, joy. He was named Leo, but the joy of motherhood was overshadowed by a growing darkness. Julian showed up at the hospital, held the baby for a few minutes, took photos for his social media proclaiming himself a proud father, and then disappeared again. Maya looked at the tiny little man in her arms, so small and innocent, and swore she would do anything to protect him. Things got even stranger when, one night, unable to sleep while breastfeeding Leo, Maya saw suspicious messages on her fiancé's phone, which he had left on the coffee table. The screen's glow lit up names she didn't know and words that made her stomach churn. "Can't wait to see you again, babe." Read a message from a Danielle. "That idiot has no idea," said another from someone named Lauren. There were photos too, photos that confirmed her worst fears. When he came back from the bathroom and saw her with the phone, his expression changed instantly. When she questioned him, trying to keep her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands, the answer didn't come in words. It came with a slap across her face. The sound echoed through the room, followed by Leo's sudden cry, startled by the noise. Maya held her face, feeling the sting spread across her cheek, her eyes filling with disbelieving tears. "You don't touch my things," he yelled, snatching the phone from her hands. "Who do you think you are to question me? I gave you everything. A house, money, this baby has everything he needs because of me." That affectionate man who used to kiss her from head to toe and cover her with gifts now revealed his true face. A manipulator, a cruel man who knew nothing of love. When she threatened to leave with the child, packing a suitcase with trembling hands while Leo cried in his crib, he grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh. "You're not going anywhere," he hissed, his face inches from hers. "This boy is my son. You try to run, and I guarantee you'll never see him again." Fear paralyzed her. She knew he had power, connections, money. He could make his threats a reality. But then, as always happens in the vicious cycle of abuse, he tried to fix what he had done. The next day, flowers filled the room. A diamond necklace appeared on her bedside table. He knelt, fake tears streaming down his face. "Forgive me, my love," he begged. "I was stressed, overworked. Those messages meant nothing. You and Leo are my family. I love you more than anything." And Maya, exhausted, scared, with nowhere to go, accepted his apology. She had to think of the baby, she told herself. Leo needed a father, but the violence only escalated. Maya was forced to have relations with him. Her body used as an object, her silent tears ignored. "A wife has duties," he would say, as if that justified everything. "You should be grateful I still want you after you've gained so much weight." The words cut deeper than any slap. She would look at her body in the mirror, marked by pregnancy, by sleepless nights, and see a stranger. To the world, Julian was a good, faithful man, attending church every Sunday in his impeccable suit, greeting the congregation, donating generously to charity. But behind closed doors, Maya lived in a gilded cage where every day was a fight for survival. That's when she decided she had to escape. Desperate, she began to plot. She spent weeks pretending to be the obedient girlfriend, discreetly researching his family. One day, rummaging through old papers he kept in a drawer, she found his mother's address and clung to that information like a lifeline. That woman could help her, she thought. What mother wouldn't have compassion for a woman and a baby in danger? She had to pretend for a long time. Months that felt like an eternity, smiling when she wanted to cry, accepting his touches when every fiber of her being screamed to run, all to regain his trust. Finally, the opportunity came. Julian announced he was traveling for a business conference in New York and would be gone for 3 days. "Behave," he said, kissing her forehead possessively. "I don't want to hear that you've been talking to neighbors or leaving the house. I have people who tell me everything." But he didn't know that Maya was prepared. The moment he was gone, her heart pounded like a war drum in her chest. Her hands trembled so much she could barely hold the clothes. She packed her and her son's things in silence, the sound of packing tape on boxes seeming like thunder to her hypersensitive ears. Every noise made her jump, fearing he would return early. She took only the essentials: clothes, documents, some savings she had hidden in a coffee can at the back of the closet. She grabbed the bags and fled, their weight feeling light compared to the weight she carried in her heart. Running toward the unknown, Leo strapped in a baby carrier against her chest, his curious little eyes not understanding his mother's urgency, searching for the one person who could possibly help her. Maya arrived exhausted after more than 12 hours of travel, carrying the weight of hours spent on a crowded bus, whose smell of sweat and fatigue filled the air, making her stomach turn. And then an Uber that took her to an unfamiliar neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. It was a simple, welcoming place, so different from the luxury condo where she had been a prisoner. The serenity of the area, with children playing in the street, their joyful shouts echoing, and elderly people resting on park benches, playing dominoes and chatting animatedly, painted a nostalgic feeling in her heart, a peace she hadn't felt in years. But the weight of what she carried, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins, the constant fear of being discovered all clouded her vision. She pulled the suitcases from the car, each one seeming heavier than before, and walked to the building where Julian's mother lived, an old 4-story building with peeling but well-kept paint with plant pots in the windows. She climbed the creaky stairs to the 3rd floor, Leo starting to fuss with hunger, but when she arrived and rang the bell, no one answered. The silence of the place made her anxiety grow until, looking around desperately, a young woman appeared in the hallway carrying grocery bags, offering to help. "Looking for someone?" the girl asked with a friendly smile. When Maya explained who she was looking for, mentioning the old woman's name, the young woman nodded and said something that made Maya's blood run cold. "Oh, Mrs. Eleanor passed away last year. It was so sad. But I know her son. Do you want to talk to him? I can take you there." The world spun for a second. His mother was dead? There went her safety plan, her hope for protection. But she had no choice. She had to try. "Please," Maya said, her voice weak. Shortly after, the young woman guided her through the narrow neighborhood streets to a small auto repair shop, where the sound of tools and the smell of oil and grease filled the air. A man was crouched next to an old car, working on the engine, his hands dirty with grease. Completely different from Julian in every way. Where Julian wore expensive suits, this man wore a simple torn t-shirt and paint-stained jeans. He had a mysterious presence and an unpretentious charm. A mechanic and painter, his face was framed by a short beard and hair that accentuated his enigmatic air. When he stood up upon hearing footsteps revealing deep, tired brown eyes, Maya felt something strange. He resembled Julian in his facial features, but there was a softness to him that the other had never possessed. Seeing her, a stranger with a baby and suitcases, Isaac stared at her suspiciously, wiping his hands on a dirty rag. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice deep and direct, not hostile but clearly not in the mood for conversation. Maya sighed, the air leaving her lungs with the weight of her story, feeling her legs weaken. "I'm the fiancé, or rather, Julian's ex-fiancé." As soon as he heard his brother's name, Isaac's face changed completely. His jaw clenched, his eyes darkened. He turned his back, ending the conversation without explanation, returning to the car engine as if she didn't exist, leaving Maya alone and helpless with Leo now crying in her arms. "Please," she shouted after him, "I need help. He hit me, he locked me up, I managed to escape, but—" "I don't want to know," Isaac interrupted without looking at her. "Problems with my brother are your problems. Stay away from me." With a heavy heart and nowhere to go, defeated, she found a modest hotel to spend the night. The room was small, clean but Spartan, with a hard mattress and thin walls through which she could hear the neighbors. She bathed Leo in the tiny sink, sang him to sleep, and then sat on the edge of the bed and finally cried. She cried for everything she had lost, for everything she had suffered, for the loneliness that consumed her. Where would she go now? How would she protect her son? The questions tormented her as the night wore on. The next morning, determined not to give up, Maya left the boy sleeping and went out again to try to talk to Isaac. Maybe in the light of day, calmly, she could make him understand. But as she turned a corner, panic struck her like lightning. In the distance, leaning against a black car with tinted windows, she saw some of Julian's men. She recognized 2 of them immediately. They were his bodyguards, scouring the neighborhood, showing her printed photo to residents, asking questions. "Have you seen her around here?" She heard one of them ask a fruit vendor. "It's urgent. The boss is offering a reward." Fear propelled her like never before. They would find her. It was only a matter of time. And then all would be lost. With her heart hammering in her chest so hard she feared everyone could hear it, she ran, her sandals slapping against the hot pavement, sweat trickling down her back, until she reached Isaac's door and rang the bell desperately, pounding on the door as well. "Open up, please, open up." When he opened, annoyed by the noise, she burst in, unceremoniously pushing past him, closing the door behind her and leaning against it, panting. "Please don't let them take me, help me," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "Them who? What are you talking about?" Isaac asked, seeing the genuine terror in her eyes, a woman on the verge of a breakdown trembling before him. She then told him everything. Every sordid detail, every lie, every act of violence. The words poured out in an uncontrollable torrent. The pregnancy, the betrayals, the slaps that turned into punches, the threats, the rape, the gilded cage. As he listened to the story, especially when she mentioned she had sought out their mother, Isaac's face hardened into a mask of pain and anger. He clenched his fists, the muscles in his neck tensing. "My mother died last year from cancer," he said, his voice broken. Julian didn't even come to the funeral. "I called, I texted, I begged." She called out for him in her final days. He cut contact, saying he was too busy with business. "I can't believe a creature like that is my brother." A heavy silence filled the room. "But he is," he continued, running his hands over his face. "And I know what he's capable of." Seeing her desperation, something in him broke. Maybe it was the memory of his mother, who had always taught him to help those in need. Maybe it was the anger he felt toward Julian. Or maybe it was simply because, for the first time in a long time, someone truly needed him. He decided to help, arranging for a house for her nearby, a small 1-story house that belonged to a neighbor who was traveling and needed someone to look after the place, promising it would be safe. "You stay here for now," he said, handing her the keys. "But don't come to my shop. The less people see us together, the better." The following days were pure terror for Maya. Every noise made her jump. Every passing car was a potential threat. She could barely eat, barely sleep. "I haven't slept in days," she confessed to Isaac in a late-night call, her voice exhausted and broken. "I think at any moment he's going to show up and break down the door. I feel like I'm going crazy. I look at Leo and think I've failed him as a mother for bringing him into this situation." On the other end of the line, Isaac listened in silence, a strange tightness in his chest. Later that night, Isaac surprised her. He called again at 2 a.m. "Maya, are you awake?" "Yes," she answered, her voice tired. "Look out the window." Frowning, she got up, pulled back the curtain, and looked out at the dark street. And there he was, sitting in a beach chair he had brought, watching her house, a silent guardian in the darkness, a still silhouette against the faint light of the lamppost. Tears filled her eyes. Someone cared. Someone was protecting her and her son. Despite coming home exhausted from work, his hands calloused and his back aching from bending over engines all day, he kept the routine: a quick shower, a simple dinner heated in the microwave, and then the silent vigil in front of her house. Sometimes he would doze off in the chair, waking at the slightest noise. Other times he would stay awake all night, smoking cigarettes that briefly lit up his face in the dark. A silent, intense connection formed between them. Maya started leaving hot coffee in a thermos on her doorstep for him. He started bringing little things for Leo, a teddy bear he found at a flea market, cookies the baby loved. One day, while fixing a dripping faucet in her house that echoed annoyingly through the kitchen, the tension that had been building between them became almost palpable. They were very close. Isaac crouched under the sink, Maya holding a flashlight to light his way. He could smell her cheap perfume. She could see the muscles in his arms move as he worked. When he finished and stood up, their bodies almost touched. "Can I ask you something?" he said, hesitant, his warm breath on her face. "Don't look at me like that, Maya. I don't want to fall in love. I'm a man and I have needs. And you're my brother's girlfriend, even if you're his ex. This is wrong in every possible way. But her gaze, a mix of gratitude and something deeper, more intense, already said everything. I was never really his girlfriend, she whispered. I was a prisoner. With you, I feel alive for the first time in so long. Isaac moved closer, fighting with himself, and kissed her, a soft, hesitant touch full of silent promises. Their lips met tenderly, so different from the forced kisses she had known. For a brief moment, the world stopped. Then, as if burned by the intensity of the moment, he quickly pulled away and left, leaving Maya with a racing heart, trembling hands, and a reborn hope blooming in her chest. A few days later, when things seemed calmer and Julian's men were no longer seen in the neighborhood, Isaac allowed himself a moment of courage. He invited her on a date to a cozy, simple restaurant by a lake where ducks swam placidly and the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. It wasn't luxurious like the places Julian frequented, but it was real, honest. They talked for hours, laughing, sharing stories from their childhoods, discovering unexpected connections. For the first time in a long time, Maya felt free. Free to smile, to dream, to be herself. A few weeks later, on her son's second birthday, Isaac and the entire neighborhood organized a simple party, but one filled with a warmth that money couldn't buy. Colorful balloons decorated the small backyard, a table laden with snacks made by the neighbors, a homemade cake with flickering candles. Children ran everywhere, laughing and playing. Maya looked around, saw Leo being held by Isaac, the man making funny faces that made the boy giggle, and felt that she had finally found a home. This humble place, these simple people, had given her more love in weeks than Julian had in years. But happiness was as fragile as glass, about to shatter. On a quiet afternoon, Maya was preparing lunch, the smell of a hearty stew filling the kitchen, when the owner of the house, the neighbor who had lent her the place, rang the bell frantically. Maya opened the door, still holding a wooden spoon, and found the woman panting, her face pale with fear, sweat pouring down her forehead. "What is it, Mary?" Maya asked, alarmed. "It's Isaac," the woman stammered, barely able to form the words, her hands trembling. "He's been shot." "At the shop. There are armed men there." Maya's world collapsed. The floor seemed to open up beneath her. She dropped everything and ran, her lungs burning, screaming his name like a mad woman through the streets. "Isaac! Isaac!" People stopping to stare at the desperate woman. And in the distance, in front of the now silent garage, she saw a scene that froze her in horror. Uniformed men, with guns at their waists, were placing a body covered by a white sheet already stained red into a black car. It was Isaac. She tried to get closer, stumbling over her own feet. "No! Let me see him, Isaac!" but was held back by two of the men. "Calm down, ma'am," one of them said in a cold, professional voice. "There's nothing you can do." Inside the car, in the back seat, one of the uniformed men turned to the passenger sitting calmly, legs crossed and a satisfied smile on his lips, revealing the merciless face of Julian. The world seemed to stop. "Mr. Julian," the man said with respect and fear in his voice, "your brother Isaac has just died." "It was quick, as you requested." Julian nodded, satisfied, looking out the window at the woman screaming and crying in the street. "Excellent work," he replied coldly. "Now get her and the kid. It's time for my family to come home." A silent scream echoed in Maya's soul as she was grabbed by strong arms. Leo was snatched from the arms of the neighbor holding him. Mother and son were forced into another car, back to the hell they had tried to escape. But this time, hell would be worse because now she knew she had lost everything. Lost Isaac, lost hope, lost the chance to be free. The journey back was a blur of tears and silence. When they arrived at the mansion, Julian dragged her by her hair to the bedroom. "Did you think I'd never find you, you slut?" he yelled, spit flying from his mouth. "A year! I spent a year looking for you. I spent a fortune tracking you. And you were sleeping with my own brother. You killed Isaac!" She screamed back, the pain turning to fury, trying to scratch his face. "You're a monster! A murderer!" He threw her to the floor. "Shut up! I've been after you for a year. And now you will never turn your back on me again. Ever." It was then that he implemented his final plan of control. Julian hired the best security trained and armed men. To watch her 24/7, one of them was Ethan, a young man with kind eyes and an imposing build, an ex-military man who needed the money to support his sick mother. He didn't know the truth, only followed orders, believing Julian's story that Maya was unstable, a danger to herself and her son, and needed protection. Ethan followed her throughout the house, was always outside every door, listened to every phone call. Unable to bear the pressure of being watched like a criminal in her own prison, Maya exploded at him one day. "Leave me alone," she screamed, throwing a vase that shattered on the wall near him. "You don't understand anything. You don't know who the real monster in this house is." Ethan, sensing a deep pain in her that went beyond simple instability, became intrigued. In the following days, he observed more closely. He saw the bruises she tried to hide under long sleeves even in the heat. He heard the screams late at night. He saw the way she flinched when Julian came near. Something was wrong. One night, while on his rounds, he found Maya sitting alone in the garden, gazing at the stars, silent tears streaming down her face. He approached slowly. "If you have something to say, you can tell me," he offered gently, breaking his protocol of maintaining professional distance. "I promise I won't tell anyone." Maya looked at him, saw something in his eyes, genuine kindness perhaps, and the dam broke. In a moment of absolute desperation, she confessed everything to the security guard, telling him the whole story from the beginning, every lie, every act of violence, the escape, Isaac, the murder. "And now I'm trapped here forever," she sobbed. And then, as if things couldn't get worse, she revealed her darkest secret, her voice breaking. "I found out I have cancer, breast cancer. The doctor said I need to start treatment immediately, but Julian isn't my husband. We never actually got married, so he won't authorize anything. He says it's all in my head, that I'm making it up for attention." Ethan felt anger boil in his chest. What kind of man was he working for? At the end, she was crying convulsively. "I just needed a hug. That's all. Someone to tell me it's going to be okay, even if it's a lie." Ethan, breaking all protocols and risking his job, surprised her with a warm, strong, protective hug. "It's going to be okay," he whispered, not knowing if he believed it, but desperately wanting it to be true. "I'm going to help you. Somehow, I'm going to get you out of here." During the chemotherapy treatment, which Ethan finally managed to get her started on by convincing Julian it would be bad press if she died under his care, he was always by her side. He took her to the hospital, held her hand when the nausea came, cleaned up her vomit when she couldn't make it to the bathroom in time, and bought her beautiful scarves to cover her head when her hair began to fall out. All the while, Julian remained indifferent, more concerned with his business and his lovers than with the woman he claimed to love. Maya, a warrior with a strong soul, even as her body weakened, beat the cancer after months of a brutal fight. The doctors declared her in remission. Julian, ever the hypocrite, seized the opportunity. He threw a large party in her honor, invited journalists, and pretended to be the devoted husband who had supported his wife through her illness. "My beloved Maya won this battle thanks to my love and care," he told reporters with a rehearsed smile, squeezing her hand too tightly, a silent warning for her to smile and agree. The photos were plastered across local papers. The story of the dedicated businessman and his survivor wife. The hypocrisy made Maya want to throw up, but something had changed during those months of treatment. A feeling for Ethan was beginning to awaken in Maya. It wasn't the overwhelming passion she had felt for Isaac, but something deeper, more solid, gratitude, respect, admiration, and yes, love. He was in love with her too, his feelings becoming more obvious each day, each glance lingering a second too long, each accidental touch making them both blush. And he, knowing he couldn't leave her in that hell, began to plan a meticulous escape. He saved every penny, sold his belongings, and made contacts with people who could help. "Everything is almost ready for us to run," he said. In secret, during a walk, she had convinced Julian to allow under Ethan's supervision, speaking softly as they pretended to just be walking. "Fake documents, tickets, hidden money, far away from this monster. To another country where he'll never find us. Will you marry me? I want to take care of you and Leo forever." Maya felt her heart explode with emotion. But before she could answer, something happened that nearly destroyed everything. Julian's personal trainer, Carla, a venomous woman he'd been having an affair with for months and who secretly dreamed of taking Maya's place, saw them talking that day. Something in the way they looked at each other made her suspicious. She followed them, and a few days later, when Ethan gave Maya a quick kiss in a supposedly empty hallway of the mansion, she recorded a video on her phone, her lips curling into a malicious smile. She finally had something to use against the woman Julian insisted on keeping around. "This is gold," she muttered to herself. "Ethan, feeling the weight of stress and the constant headaches that had plagued him since he started planning the escape. Decided to investigate something that had always bothered him. Isaac's death didn't make sense. Something just didn't add up. One day, he used his old military contacts to look into the case, calling in favors, asking questions. What he discovered was shocking. There was no official record of the death. No body in the morgue, no death certificate. It was as if Isaac had never existed or was still alive. He pushed harder until he received a call that made his heart stop. An unknown number. "Ethan," said a male voice he didn't recognize. "My name is Isaac. You're looking after Maya. We need to talk." The call was brief but revealing. Isaac was alive, hiding in another country, and he needed Ethan to bring Maya to him. He ran to Maya, finding her alone in her room, looking out the window. "What is it?" she asked, seeing his expression. His answer left her in absolute shock. "Maya, Isaac is alive." "No," she said, backing away, her head spinning. "I saw it. He died." "There was blood." "There was." Ethan, his eyes tearing up with emotion, replied firmly, holding her shoulders. "No, Maya, he didn't die. He had to fake his own death to get away from Julian. It was the only way he could survive. He's safe in another country, and he asked me to take you to him. I'm the only person who can reunite you two." Her world stopped. Isaac was alive. After all this time of grief, of pain, he was alive. But then, Ethan asked the question that broke his own heart. "You need to make a choice now. Do you want to run away with me and get married, build a new life with me, or do you want to go to Isaac?" A heavy silence filled the room. Maya looked at this good man, this man who had saved her so many times, who loved her with a pure intensity. And then she thought of Isaac, of the love that had never ended, of the connection that still pulsed in her heart. With a broken heart, knowing she was hurting a wonderful man, she answered honestly, "I'm so sorry, Ethan. From the bottom of my soul, I am so sorry. You deserve all the love in the world. But I want to go with Isaac. I never stopped loving him." Ethan nodded, wiping away a tear, loyal to the end. "I understand," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll take you to him. It's what you deserve, to be happy." He sacrificed his own happiness for hers. In the following days, he prepared everything meticulously for the escape, but at the last moment, as if fate were conspiring against them, the personal trainer showed the video to Julian. The explosion of rage was immediate. "That girl showed him the video! Julian knows everything. We have to get out of here now." Ethan yelled, breaking down the door to Maya's room, grabbing her arm and pulling her through a secret exit he had planned. They could hear Julian's furious shouts and heavy footsteps coming up the stairs. "Wait, my son!" she cried, trying to go back. "He's already in the car with someone I trust. I wasn't going to forget him. Let's go." They ran through the dark night, their hearts beating wildly. When they reached the airport, fake documents in hand, Ethan said his goodbyes at the departure gate. Leo was sleeping in Maya's arms. "From here on, it's up to you," he said, handing her an envelope with money and addresses. "Isaac will meet you on the other side." Overcome with emotion, Maya touched his face tenderly. "You're going to find a woman who's better than me," she said, her voice breaking. "A woman who will love you like you deserve, who will give you a family, who will make you happy every single day. You're a hero, Ethan. Never forget that." He smiled sadly, memorizing her face one last time. "Be happy, Maya. It's all I ever wanted." The reunion with Isaac, at the airport of a distant country whose name she could barely pronounce, was an explosion of tears and emotion. He was there, in the arrivals area, thinner, with a new scar on his neck from where the bullet had grazed him, but alive, real, waiting for her. When their eyes met across the crowd, time stood still. They ran to each other, Leo waking with the movement, and they hugged as if they never wanted to let go again. "You're alive," he whispered in her ear, kissing her face, her neck, her hands. "I thought he had killed you. When I found out he took you back, I almost died for real." "We're together now," she replied, crying and laughing at the same time. "We're finally safe." Far away, Julian, consumed by hatred and a thirst for revenge, met the end he deserved. His own crimes, his betrayals, his enemies piled up until, on a rainy night, he was shot in an ambush set by business rivals he had made throughout his corrupt life. He died alone, in a pool of blood with no one to mourn him. The news reached Maya months later through an online newspaper. She felt a strange emptiness, not joy but relief. The monster could no longer hurt her. Ethan started his life over in another country, carrying the memory of Maya in his heart but determined to move on. He got a job as a security guard for an international company, an honest job that gave him dignity. But fate still had surprises in store for him. Months after his arrival, he befriended a coworker, Mohammed, a kind and hardworking man. One day, Mohammed came to him in desperation. His wife, Inez, was very sick in the hospital, and he didn't want their daughter, Samira, to see her in that terminal state, connected to tubes and machines. She has a strong personality. She's temperamental. If she sees her mom like this, she'll fall apart. Please, just stop her from going into the room today. Just for today, until I have the courage to prepare her, he asked, his eyes welling with tears. Ethan agreed. He went to the hospital, and while waiting in the cold white corridor, he saw a woman walking purposefully toward him. She was stunningly beautiful. Dark, curly hair cascading over her shoulders, intense green eyes, a presence that filled the hallway. The photo Mohammed had sent came through on his phone at the same moment. It was her, Samira. His heart gave a strange leap. "Excuse me," she said in a firm voice filled with suppressed fear. "I need to see my mother." Ethan gently blocked her path. "I'm sorry, but there's been a change in visiting hours. Technical issues. You'll have to come back in a few hours." It was a lie, but it was the first thing that came to mind. She stared at him, suspicious. What kind of technical issues? He improvised details, and surprisingly, she believed him, or at least pretended to. An immediate electric connection sparked between them in that hospital corridor, under the cold fluorescent lights. In the following days, Ethan discovered that Samira had a boyfriend, Rashid, an abusive and domineering man who controlled her through emotional manipulation and sick jealousy. Ethan became a safe harbor for her and her father, offering support as Inez's health deteriorated. Samira's mother was on the verge of death, and the doctors said there was nothing more they could do. The family was preparing for the inevitable, turning off the machines that were keeping her artificially alive. Samira's aunt, Lila, Inez's younger sister, was an envious and bitter woman who had always coveted her sister's life, her successful husband, her beautiful daughter, her nice house. No one knew, but one night, when everyone had left the hospital room, Layla was left alone with the comatose Inez. Leaning over the bed, her lips almost touching her unconscious sister's ear, she whispered with venom in every word, "You're going to die, sis. And I'll finally have everything that should have been mine from the start. I'm going to have your husband. I'm going to raise your daughter as my own. I'm going to live in your house, sleep in your bed. And you'll turn to dust and be forgotten." Satisfied with her cruelty, she left the room, unaware that in the depths of the coma, something had registered her words. On the day they were scheduled to turn off the machines, the whole family gathered. It was a moment of final farewell. Mohammed held Inez's hand, crying silently. Samira, on the other side of the bed, held her mother's other hand, tears streaming down her face. "Mom," she whispered, "I love you so much. Thank you for everything. You can rest now." The doctor was about to turn off the machines when it happened, a miracle no one expected. Inez squeezed Samira's hand. It was a faint, almost imperceptible movement, but it was real. "She squeezed it," Samira cried out. "Doctor, she squeezed my hand." Tests were done in a hurry. Against all medical odds, Inez was coming out of the coma. She woke up gradually over the next few days, weak but alive, a true miracle. Amid the celebration of her recovery, Samira and Ethan grew closer and closer. He was always there, helping with everything, bringing food for the family, keeping them company during the long hours at the hospital. One night, when they needed to get some things from Samira's house, they ended up alone in a car parked under a starry sky. The tension between them was palpable. "Can I ask you a personal question?" she said, turning to face him. "Of course," he replied. "Why are you helping our family so much? You barely know us." Ethan hesitated, then decided to be honest. He told her his entire story with Maya, every painful detail, every sacrifice. When he finished, Samira was looking at him with a new intensity. "And have you, by any chance, found the woman that Maya said needed you?" she asked, a hopeful glint in her eyes. Ethan leaned in, his face close to hers, able to feel her breath. "If I tell you I love you, will you believe me?" "I don't know," she whispered back. "Show me." And he showed her, kissing her with all the pent-up passion, all the new love blooming in his chest. The romance blossomed quickly, culminating in secret dates and passionate kisses under the stars. Samira finally found the courage to break up with Rashid, who didn't take it well and made threats they ignored. But Aunt Layla, always watching, always envious, discovered the romance. And when Inez, recovering more each day, whispered what she had heard in her coma, her own sister's cruel words, Layla knew she was in danger. Desperate, she hatched a plan to separate Samira and Ethan, using an old rival of Samira's, Jasmine, to try to seduce Ethan and create jealousy. The setup almost worked. Jasmine showed up at a cafe where Ethan was waiting for Samira, sat provocatively close to him, touched his arm, made advances. Samira arrived at the exact planned moment and saw the scene, completely misinterpreting it. The fight was explosive. "How could you?" she yelled, throwing water in his face. "I trusted you. It's not what it looks like." He tried to explain, but she was already walking away, her heart shattered. They went their separate ways, heartbroken, with pride and pain preventing any reconciliation. Days passed, miserable days of longing and regret, until by chance in a busy restaurant their eyes met. She was sitting with friends, trying to pretend she was fine. He was alone, eating mechanically without tasting the food. The longing was stronger than pride. He stood up and walked to her table. "Can we talk?" She nodded, and they went out to the restaurant's terrace. The truth finally came out. Lila had set everything up. Jasmine had confessed after feeling guilty. They hugged, apologized for not trusting each other, and right there, under the same stars that had witnessed their first kiss, Ethan got down on one knee and asked her to marry him. "Samira, I love you more than anything. You are my gift from fate after all the suffering. Marry me?" She said yes, crying with happiness. Aunt Layla was arrested for attempted murder after Inez, fully recovered, filed a formal complaint detailing everything that had happened. Justice was finally served. Samira and Ethan were married in a small but beautiful ceremony, surrounded by true friends and family. They built a life together, a love born from pain and loyalty, proving that even after the darkest nights, the sun always rises again, and somewhere far away, Maya and Isaac were also building their happiness. Raising Leo in safety, free from Julian forever. Sometimes, Maya would think of Ethan and whisper a prayer of gratitude for that good man who had sacrificed his happiness for hers. And somehow, she knew he was okay, that he had found his own happy ending. Because in the end, everyone deserved love, everyone deserved peace, and everyone deserved a second chance at happiness. Video outro, hopeful, uplifting music begins to play. Hey, brave hearts! What a breathtaking journey that was with Maya. Her story is a gut punch, but it's also a beacon of hope. We watched a woman survive the nightmare of manipulation and show us the true meaning of resilience. A journey that taught us about the difference between the obsession that imprisons and the love that sets you free. Whether it's the rediscovered love with Isaac, or the loyal, sacrificial love of Ethan, a hero who also deserved and found his own happy ending. Now it's your turn. What was the most impactful moment for you? Was it Isaac's silent vigil? Ethan's hug in the garden, breaking all the rules? Or the shocking twist that Isaac was still alive? Let us know in the comments. If this story touched you, please share it so more people know that it's always possible to start over. And don't forget to suggest themes for our next video. A big hug, and until next time, where we'll prove once again that love in all its forms is the most revolutionary force in the universe.